School of Arts here in many ways. It's sculptural, it's colorful, it's inviting. As far as the green, I think it's going to work really well, particularly if there's a gesture to what Andy said, gesture to the curtain because of this theater. And I think it's a nice contrast between same material but differently textured and colored. The screen, it could be either bone, glass or aluminum to me, as far as it represents kind of this art color. And that's basically it for me.
Anything else? I'll tell you, I like the idea of the alternating angles on the windows down on the first floor over there. Just an interesting feature. The courtyard is much better than it was. I remember being in the previous sunken courtyard, and it just wasn't very appealing. I like the fins, is I think what you called them, the color adds just a pop of color to a building that is otherwise, mostly brick. And I think it'll be a nice feature that would make the building stand out. And I also would be in support of the conceptual approval recommended by the city.
This is Leon Scott. I too am in agreement with staff recommendation with conceptual approval, and I do like that whole abstract brick that gives it a stage curtain appearance. And I think the colors actually I like those a whole lot. So, but again, I'm certainly in agreement with staff recommendation. Thank you.
All right.
Quickly, I want to add that the name of the school is on the canopy, so that SOTA it's actually nicely balancing those recessed bricks arches.
Luda, I can't hear you.
Oh, here we go again. I'm sorry, the microphone is with camera. So what I'm saying is that the name of the college is on the canopy already, and it's large enough. So SOTA on the brick is actually graphical art here, and it balances well that wall. That's it.
Thank you for pointing that out.
All right. Any other comment from the board, or is there a motion?
David, I'd make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments and other comments from board members.
I second.
All right. So that's a motion by Mr. Meadows for conceptual approval with staff and board comments, and that has been seconded by Ms. Sobchak, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
I vote yay in favor.
All right. Mr. Meadows?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak?
Yay in favor.
And this is David Hazelton, yay in favor. All right.
Dennis,
Okay.
when I logged back in, I just came in as a panelist. Can you make me co-host?
Oh, sure. Okay. Yes. Okay, next up is, are you all set, Alex?
Yes.
Okay. Next up is 25 Ann Street, requesting preliminary approval for the new phase of the Children's Museum, the Low Country, for an open pavilion and associated site work. This is a Category 2 structure in Mezquite Ragboro, circa 1849 to 1850 in the Old and Historic District. Location of the existing museum right here. This building here was approved for demolition previously. That's that building right there. This is the William Aiken House to the west. And then across the street. And the previous motion was conceptual approval with staff and board comments, and that was August of last year. Board comments, one board member agreed with the majority of staff comments, felt that the project was lightweight and respectful of neighboring buildings, asked that they consider the fence being whimsical in plan as well as elevation, mentioned that it's a nice alternative to the previous design, and that fig ivy on the stucco would be nice. Mentioned the light color ceiling is preferred, metal may be best. And finally, a good job on a challenging project. Another board member said, great project, a lot of fun, agree with staff recommendations. The third board member mentioned being challenged by the height of the roof and the steel columns in the ground needing to be thought out, possibly stainless at the base. And the fourth board member agreed with all staff and board comments. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicants. Alex, if you could elevate them to so they can speak. Thank you.
Yes. And I've promoted Jennifer Charkowski to panelist, and she's going to mute herself.
Thank you so much, Alex. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And this is Jennifer Charkowski with Leolia Architecture. Alex, you were super close.
I knew I was going to get it wrong.
Awesome. Well, we retained a lot of the information in our presentation from conceptual. So Dennis, if you're controlling the screen, we can flip ahead to slide 3, I think.
Three, okay.
Start by addressing responses to staff comments, with my apologies that we did not itemize the board comments on here, but we will work to address those verbally as we talk. The first comment from staff was to study the material of the metal ceiling and to consider wood. We did look at several alternate materials, but do feel strongly that the metal panel ceiling is clean, it's sleek, it's light, both visually and physically, easy to maintain, and the best solution for this design. So we did retain that in this preliminary application. There were comments on looking at the wall along John Street. And we did propose a switch to a perforated brick wall that is recessed from the sidewalk to allow planting in front to address those comments. A lot of the details are the same from conceptual. You will see some evolution on the fence enclosure, the powder coated aluminum fence. And then in our presentation, we will also speak to lighting. There were comments from the staff about carefully, clearly identifying what the lighting is. So we could skip through as we talk about some of the following slides, and we'll just keep going. Dennis, you can just keep clicking through, but historically this is a national landmark district that is specific to rail. If you go back one and just pause right there, there has been a previous renovation, back one more, I'm sorry, of the historic Camden Sheds, which is a circa 1850 building. It's been heavily modified as a result of the earthquake, but the significant renovation was completed in 2002 and it's in great condition. So we will note some limited exterior work to this building, but it's primarily was interior work for that. And then as we click through some of the context photos, you know, it's important to notice obviously the William Aiken house, and there's an accessory wing that has a really iconic form and color that's immediately adjacent to the Children's Museum. And can keep going. As we mentioned last time, I can keep going. Or let's go ahead to slide 12. There's currently the entrance to the museum is mid-block, which as we discussed last time is a lot of wayfinding and urban issues. So this project relocates the entrance to Ann Street. And if we click to slide 15, as you go through, you see the context photos. The material palette of the existing museum is restrained. It highlights the historic fabric of the plaster castle walls, the crenellation, an expression of the brick masonry shear walls comes through. And so the balance, this building is 400 feet long, and the balance is corrugated metal with exposed fasteners. It'd be great if the building was wearing a fascinator, exposed fasteners, and punched openings. So we can go through to slide 19. We do still have the power easement that we talked about last time that has stayed in its current configuration. The site design here is not really changed from what you saw at conceptual. We extend the city's bluestone detail, feathering it in to expand the public realm, and are creating entry to the building through a light floating black locust wood deck. It was important to keep that structure light rather than bringing in fill in order to avoid settlement issues with the adjacent sensitive historic structures. If you will click through to slide 28, these are just further information about the museum and the concept. So here's our current rendered view. Not much has changed in this view since the conceptual application, other than some orientation and tweaks to the pickup stick columns. So the next slide shows the two side by side. There is still a really light floating roof edge with a suspended metal ceiling. And as we'll point out later in the details, there'll be continuous LED lighting proposed to create that, have that reveal softly glow. This John Street elevation, if you stop here for a moment, has much more significant evolution. This was what you saw at conceptual approval with the wavy topped powder coated aluminum fence and the plain stucco wall that we received a lot of comments on. So the next slide shows our proposed updated view. We thought it was important, you know, we talked last time that this powder coated aluminum fence does need to express the character of the museum, but it is set right way back and we don't want to confuse it with an entrance to the property. So we wanted to quiet it down a little. So we're still proposing a use of color, but we've evened it out as an 8-foot fence and then switched the screen wall at the parking to a perforated brick with plantings in front. The brick is unpainted so that it's distinguished from the historic Camden shed crenellated end. I think as we go through, we will get into a few technical drawings so we can point out some details. We'll stop here, I'm sorry. The materials, we would have exposed corrugated metal deck on the high roof within that floating metal panel ceiling below it with a smooth finish. The use of black locust and bluestone as hardscaping materials and a gradient color in these yellow tones for the powder coated aluminum fence. We are moving towards the colors of these pickup sticks being more specific rather than diagrammatic. We do think we studied you know, more singular color palettes, but really think the expression of the multicolor is important to express the use of this building, which is a building for play and development of children. I think if we continue to there, the C200, the site plan, just wanted to point out that the dumpster enclosure is part of that fence enclosure. So you won't see a separate enclosure for the dumpster. And if we click through to the building floor plans of before and after. The change to point out here is that the area of the fence enclosure got shorter from what you saw previously to what you see today. So we did that to accommodate vehicular movement on site as well as consolidate. We cleaned up some grading issues that helped us resolve some previously awkward ramps and stairs at the building exits. And then we recessed the wall from the John Street side. I think probably the next thing to point out would be on the roof plan. There's not a significant change. It is still a continuous slope from the front to the back. Previously, we showed 5 columns at the rear. 2 of them were faux columns planned to address power, but we have now incorporated that into straight columns. So we have a balanced of 3 pickup stick columns at the rear and maintaining the same at the front. There will be a scupper at the low end for stormwater management, which we can talk about and we'll get into the details. This just gives you a sense of some of the exhibit and materials. The ceiling plan, the next one is another great place to note. The evolution. So the ceiling planks are proposed to be 12-foot wide metal panel. This will help reduce the risk of any oil canning in this narrow dimension. They can make them in length to stretch the full width. We might end up deciding on a joint the long way. There is a regular grid of recessed can lights that are interspersed with sprinkler heads, concealed sprinkler heads, which follow the same grid. So where you see really tiny dots, those are sprinkler heads, and the larger circles are the can lights. The black circles are the columns. We've gone to 4 ceiling fans. Those we plan to hang at a continuous datum line just to keep them quiet. And then so those will be the only other element in the ceiling. And then a concealed linear edge light will be recessed between the metal panel ceiling and the deck above. There you see the scupper for drainage. So as we go into the building elevations, the scope here is really on the existing building is to replace the exposed fascinators with stainless steel screws with neoprene washers. It's kind of a building maintenance issue. There will be some select stucco repair. And on the play pavilion side of the existing building, we're adding a portion of 6-inch half-round copper gutter with downspouts just for water management on the occupied side, but we're not planning to do it on the other side of the building. You see in this elevation, again, the simplified fence profile. The previous was above with the current wavy top, and the current proposed is below, a little bit quieter. The pavilion roof, just to note, slopes from just under 19 feet at the high point, which is below the lower tower of the crenellated end, and it goes down to 14.5 feet at the low end. I think we'll click through these. They still have the expression of the fence as it faces. I know there were we talked last time about what's driving the height of that, and we are still working to moderate safety for the visitors because the public can go up onto that raised platform. They want to keep a safety from the public for the children playing beyond. But children can still get little peeks into between the fence slats. You keep going, and thank you, Dennis. There's just a lot in here for reference. We'll go to the wall section. There we go. This is very similar to what you saw at conceptual. We have a steel collar so that the pickup stick columns actually penetrate the pavilion roof with an oculus that's surrounded by a steel collar ring. And you see the edge is tapered to a very small C-channel profile of the roof with a gravel stop detail. And then the metal panel ceiling is suspended with a bit of a floating edge where we have a continuous LED strip light. And then down at the lower left of the image, you see again, the same as last time, the simple steel canopy detail at building doors from the Camden shed. The power and sprinklers will run in a concealed way above the metal panel ceiling. It's really important to this project that it's as clean and light and sleek as possible. And here at the entry point, there's you see a small light fixture proposed for each side of the entry door. This is typical of any building entrances with a simple light fixture. You see here the floating access deck. We're proposing the handrail to have integral lighting, so it is clean and simple. The fence is powder-coated aluminum. We're proposing 2-foot wide panels that have a backup steel tube frame to support them on the inside. There are a few locations with gates. And then these are the light fixtures. Can lights in the high ceiling, the linear lights below that go around the edge, the integral handrail lighting at the front entrance, and then the building mounted, simple wall-mounted fixtures. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. We're happy to answer questions on anything that we might not have addressed.
So David, I have a couple of questions. This is James.
Certainly.
So Jennifer, what is the pitch of that new roof end up being?
It is a 1/4 inch per foot. It's going to be a fully adhered proposed PVC membrane roof. We've been working with TRC. We have another TRC meeting tomorrow morning. Actually, this handling stormwater is a big issue to the city. And what they requested is that we endeavor to collect the water and sheet flow it as directly as we can into, there's an existing storm inlet kind of right below that location. We know that's going to gather some velocity. So we're working on the dimensions of the scupper to manage that, but it will be, running down and flowing over that end, but in a purposeful way to get to that existing storm drain inlet.
So I mean that may be a sizable gutter, and you went right to it, or a capture point, whatever you want to call that.
Right.
I understand.
Exactly.
The second thing is you mentioned that you were going to be installing copper gutter on one side of the building.
Yes, sir. Just basically like you see in this elevation, the length of the Camden roof that runs below the play pavilion. Just to control how that runs down into the play area.
Sure. But what is that roof above that?
On the Camden shed,
Yes.
it's a painted metal roof, sir.
So is that a galvanized roof though?
Actually, it might be galvanized. Right.
I think it's, I went down and looked at it today.
Oh, are you worried
just
about two metals?
Galvanic action, yeah.
Just make sure that, you take a look at
Okay.
what that metal is, and if the coating is, if it has a coating on it, if it's failing, or if
Gotcha.
it doesn't have a coating, how are you going to isolate that copper from that material, because that won't last very long. And then the third thing was, we talked about as I walk around town and I look at steel pipe columns coming down to the ground, and I see that intersection with the ground, and you can just watch the paint and the efflorescence that starts, or the deterioration to the paint and ultimately the metal. And I had asked previously about the steel going up, it's painted, I mean, it's going to be okay. But at that intersection with the ground, or for 6 inches below the ground, there's a note and I just couldn't read it. But what's happening with that? How's that going?
That is something, and it probably bears study. Right now, we looked at stainless steel socks, and the column footings are actually placed pretty low. So they were going to be very expensive knee socks going down to the base plate. And we wanted to make sure we guided the investment into a little bit more public details of the building. But that's not to say that we can't study that further, to your understanding the specific concern about just where the column touches the ground and might effloresce as it draws up. We are planning the flooring around those columns is a poured rubber flooring, similar to what you might see on playgrounds. So we were planning an expansion joint material around the base of the column, that then the rubber flooring would get poured up to. Sure,
but I think maybe just ask the structural engineer about just, the last foot or whatever of that column, just welding on a stainless steel pipe, same dimension, and then grinding the joint smooth. And when you paint it, and I mean, and that will really help them with their long-term investment.
Gotcha. You bet.
Are those columns galvanized, Jennifer?
Well, we're planning for a high performance coating on those. So not just regular old paint, but a high performance coating.
Yeah, so that's what I was seeing, Dennis, in the drawings, and that's why I bring it up, Jennifer. I just think long term, not investing in that now for them will cost them significantly in the future.
Well, especially if we can do it in that portion that touches the ground versus all the way down.
Exactly.
All the way down to the base plate. We can take a look at that.
I had a question, Jennifer. The ceiling panels, are they backed in any way? Or if not, what's the gauge?
I don't know the gauge offhand. I might need to look that up and respond. They do come in a variety of gauges, but part of the intention of having them be the 12 inches wide is so that they gain a lot of additional stiffness by being a narrow profile. They have a rolled edge, so they're not perfectly flat. The edge comes forms a little bit of a box, which also helps with the stiffness.
Yeah, just be concerned about oil canning, but
yes,
depends on the gauge.
Specified at a gauge sufficient to avoid oil canning.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there any public comment on this project?
No public comment on this one.
No public comment. All right, moving on. Mr. Dow, city staff comments and recommendations.
Yeah, this project is developing nicely and should be a big boost for the Children's Museum. The elimination of the shaped top to the yellow fence on the John Street side is an improvement in our opinion. And we actually wondered if you could study lowering the height of the shaped top portion of the fence if possible, but it sounds like, you know, once you get up on that deck, you want to prevent people from looking over. Maybe the portion to the right could be reduced in height, you know, where you're not on the deck. Stucco repairs and repointing of the south wall of the existing building will need to be reviewed in detail with staff. Testing of existing stucco and mortar for match will be necessary. I feel like the lattice brick wall is definitely an improvement. And you know, I mentioned that comment that came up last time about the stainless steel sleeves at grade not having been addressed, but you know, we talked about that with James, and I think you're going to look into that. Details on the project are very well considered. So we're recommending preliminary approval with staff conditions noted.
Thank you, Mr. Dow.
You're welcome.
Is there any response necessary or clarification from the applicant regarding city staff comments and recommendations?
Just thank you for the comments, and we definitely will study, you know, especially the stainless steel base, and work with the Children's Museum leadership on what we can do with the heights of the fence to, we want to keep a pleasing wave and also keep it secure, but we understand that it does get tall at the one side. We will definitely study that.
Thank you. Comment, discussion from the board?
David, I'll start it off. I just, attention needs to be paid, and I know Jennifer's going to do it. You know, the pitch of the roof at 1/4 doesn't leave a lot of margin for installation error. And then when you get down to the end, sizing the receiver for all of that water is going to be important for the success of the end of that. And then I've already talked about the copper gutter should be looked at, and just taking some time to look at the upfront investment to save some longer-term expense for the museum with the intersection of the steel columns in the ground. And Jennifer, I think it looks, I like it. I think it looks great.
Thank you.
This is Leon Scott. I'm with staff recommendation. I think it looks fantastic. I love that building. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine with staff recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is Yuda Savchuk. I'm in support of staff recommendations. It's really fun project, really children will be learning here a lot and have fun. So I think I will move for the conceptual approval with
Preliminary, I think.
too early.
I'm sorry? It's preliminary review?
I'm sorry, preliminary review approval with staff recommendations, condition noted.
So that's a motion for preliminary approval with staff conditions noted?
Correct.
Okay.
I will second it.
Can I add one thing? I think this could be preliminary with staff conditions noted and final review by staff. I think we can deal with, you know, what issues arose tonight at a staff level if the board's comfortable with that. So I'm just modifying our recommendation to include final review by staff.
And Dennis, I'm good with that also, but I also like to have board comments included.
Okay. So you might ask Ms. Sobchuk if she's willing to modify her motion to that effect.
Preliminary approval with staff conditions noted and board comments noted. And with final review and approval by staff.
So Ms. Sobchak's motion, amended motion, is preliminary approval with staff noted, as well as board, including board comments, and then final review by staff, correct?
Correct.
Good.
I will second that. It's Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yay and in favor.
Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
And this is David Hazelton. I vote yay in favor, and the motion 4-0.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think we'll get Mr. White back now. I'll wait for him.
It would help if I unmuted myself. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, next up is 257 to 261 King Street. This is a request for conceptual approval for renovation of a rear facade to include new fenestration, rear entries, roof decks, and removal of an elevator tower. These buildings are circa 1902 to 44 for 257 to 259 in the Olden Historic District, and 1944 to 51 for 261 King, the awning and facade. So this is the location of the building here on King Street. And really the location of the project is back in here, the parking lot area at the rear. So it's the Kresge building, Woolworths. And now you see the location of the project here behind that building. Looking from Bufane Street, looking towards the rear of the building. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the applicants. Alex, if you could elevate them to applicant or to participant.
Yes. I promoted Alicia Reed, and she can unmute herself and turn on her camera if she has it.
I started.
There you are.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, as Dennis and Alex mentioned, I'm Alicia Reed with Reggie Gibson Architects. Basically, we're looking to converting the second floor of this building and part of the first floor at the back to short-term rental units. The second floor of the building has been vacant for 20 to 30 years, so we're excited to see that actually getting used. If you can click on to the survey, you can see our property here backs up. We're the back, and we're backing up to a bunch of backs. We back up to the Restoration Hotel rear, we back up to the parking garage, and then we have the back of retail along our parking lot. We fortunately do have enough parking on the site for all of our parking requirements, so that's not an issue. You can see here on the landscape plan, we're basically looking at a little alleyway, and we're creating small courtyards within that to create some continuity, and those are connected with an arbor that brings all those elements together. We're emphasizing that this is an entry and a place of public use, semi-public use, I guess, by changing the paving material at the entry area. We'll leave the parking lot as asphalt, and here at the main entry and in the courtyards, we'll go to some type of pavers. The amount of landscaping in the arbor in particular also help create some privacy, since these are short-term rentals, they're Airbnb style. So we want to give the people staying there some level of privacy from the garage. If you continue, you can see on the second floor, we're creating some roof gardens on the one-story spaces. And those would also tie into the landscaping down below. And you can continue to the demolition plans. The first floor demolition, here you can see we're creating some new openings for fenestration. The primary thing we're demolishing is the elevator tower, which is structurally unsound and pulling away from the building. And the wall adjacent to it is cobbled together with some different materials and also needs to be rebuilt. Otherwise, we're mainly demolishing for fenestration and at the entry to reconfigure that a little bit. Can continue. Same on the second floor. You can see also towards the south, that large rectangle, we're creating an internal courtyard so that we can get some more light and have a gathering space. Can move on. We're also going to put some skylights on the roof so that we can get some more daylight into the units, which you'll see as you see the proposed floor plan, what I'm talking about there. Can continue. The ground floor plan shows we have 3 units and a meeting space down there, a lobby and a courtyard. It's really important that we define the entry here because this is a self-serve Airbnb kind of place. There's no check-in or anything like that. So they'll be given a code or a key fob or something to get in. Can continue. The second floor, you can see we have a couple of roof decks. We're putting those skylights in a lot of the bedrooms so they can have some natural light. Our main point of new construction would be the elevator and stair tower. You can continue. That's just the roof plan. Can continue on. These are just some photos of the existing condition. You can see the street view. It's pretty far set back from the street. And then you can see the scale of the Restoration Hotel behind what was formerly Duncan Parnell. Again, we just want to bring more, make that area look more like an entry. And then the 2 photos on the bottom show just how many repairs have been done with different materials over time. And our goal is really just to make that more cohesive. This is just a brief timeline showing that this building has always had a retail function on the ground floor, which we will keep. It's currently for rent. If you know any retailers looking to expand. It was Woolworths up until the 90s, and then most recently it was Talbot's that closed just a couple years ago. And this was what we had staff approved, just a facade renovation to clean that up and make repairs. That's just for reference. And again, just for reference on the masonry. These are the existing and proposed elevations. You can see the Duncan Parnell, the former Duncan Parnell part was pretty nondescript. We're adding some more glass so it looks more like an entry, signify more visual interest by creating more depth in there. We're adding a decorative gate to create some privacy for those courtyards. Most of our, all of our fenestration is going to be aluminum clad so that it relates to that warehouse feel that was back there and is back there. And then our west elevation, the materials continue around the corner. It's a really simple palette. We're trying to clean up the brick where we can, paint it where it's already been painted and it would be too difficult to get off. We're using an arbor-like structure across the back to connect all that area. And then on the far left, there's a courtyard wall there that we plan to use salvaged brick to rebuild that wall and create some extra privacy because that's so far back in that corner. And if you'll continue, it'll have the enlarged elevations that call out the materials. Here you can see the brick. The only really new material we're adding is an accent tile to signify where the entry points are. And again, we're using metal, a little bit of wood at the parapet areas. And then if you'll go to the last one, you can see the steel arbor connecting everything. Those little pops of green behind it are those areas of tile that signify entry points. And the one new piece of construction that is a different material would be the stair tower that we're proposing as ground face block. Since all the other existing masonry is brick, we think this would help differentiate that this is a new construction piece. And I think that's it.
Okay. David, are you still here?
Just on mute. Are there any questions of the applicant? Hearing none, any public comment on this project?
We have one person speaking on this application, and I will allow Erin Minigan to speak.
Thanks, Alex. Erin Minigan, Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciates the applicant reaching out to us on this and walking us through the proposed changes to the building. While we generally find the project to be an interesting and creative approach to activating this rear space of the building, we do question the extent of historic material removal. We understand from the applicant that the areas proposed for removal at the northwest corner of the building, including the one-story portion and the elevator shaft, are later additions, but we would feel more comfortable if supporting evidence could be submitted substantiating the age and condition of those brick walls. Also, we feel the yellow brick surround the center of the west elevation should be retained as an original element that specially used the same material as the front facade to demarcate the rear entrance. Finally, we are opposed to removing the historic brick at the second floor south elevation at the proposed rooftop terrace to create the large window openings, which will be visible from the right-of-way and is highly inappropriate from a preservation perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dowd?
Well, the one-story building.
Comment?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Alex, is there any other public comment?
That's the extent of public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Dowd?
Yeah, the one-story building at the rear is newer than 1955 and the newest part of the existing complex. The project is marginally visible from Bufane Street and only really behind the parking lot. The west elevation is even more minimally visible. The staff believes the rooftop terraces will not be visible, although a model or 3D drawings would have been a great help in determining that. This area behind the building is currently a dirty, degraded alley, frankly, and this project will really clean it up with the proposed green space and some of the architectural moves. It's well conceived with high quality materials and really doesn't represent a big impact on the historic structures, in our opinion. So we're recommending conceptual approval.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Any response or clarification to public comment and city staff recommendations or comments from the applicant?
Alicia? No.
I think we're good.
You're good? Okay, thank you. Board discussion.
Well, I'll jump in very quickly. This is an elegant intervention in one of the least elegant parts of Charleston. So I commend the applicant for having the mental dexterity to imagine something better than the crappy alleyway it's always been. And I agree with staff's assessment of the really marginal visibility of this structure. If you were tucked back anymore, I don't know you'd be on our agenda at all. So I agree with staff's recommendation.
This is Leon.
David, this is, oh, sorry,
Go
Leon,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, this is Leon.
I agree with us.
Go, go.
Let's go James and then Leon. How about that?
I'm sorry, my friend Leon, excuse me.
That's okay.
That's
good.
I agree with staff comments.
Thanks, James.
You bet.
This is Leon again. I couldn't put it better than both Dennis and Jay said that area is currently a dirty, degraded alley. And I walk past it every day, and this is a very welcomed project. Thank you. I am certainly in agreement with staff and board.
This is Luda Sobchuk. I'm in agreement with everybody, and actually it will be, even so it's tucked away, but it will be a pleasant discovery for people who will be using it. So.
This is Jay. I'll introduce a motion for conceptual approval.
Luda Sobchuk, second.
All right. Ms. White made a motion for conceptual approval, seconded by Ms. Subject. Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
I vote yay in favor.
Mr. Meadows, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. White, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
And Ms. Subject, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
And this is David Hazelden. I vote yay in favor. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is 547 Meeting Street, requesting final approval for new construction of a hotel in the Historic Corridor District. So we've seen this project before here in Upper Meeting Street between Walnut and Meeting near East Street. This building was approved by this board for demolition. This is a view across the street from the property. And then looking south on Meeting Street and looking north on Meeting. Again, the site over here on the left. This Quonset hut building is also gone at this point. And then we're looking south on Walnut, which looks very different now from this because there's a storage building there now, brick storage building. And looking north on Walnut. So the previous motion was preliminary approval with all staff comments to study and expand the color palette beyond black and white. And that was back in November of last year. One board member liked the ground floor retail, liked the cantilever of the corner, mentioned researching white brick versus painted brick, and possibly some more brick options. Second board member said the cantilever corner is good, but the height of that opening into the garage is too great. Maybe relate to the storefront transom height. Feels like columns should be there. I think they're talking about the cantilever corner. Not sure about the top floor. Don't agree about eliminating brick on the south elevation and agree with all staff comments. The third board member said everything was brown, not contrasting black and white. Encourage the introduction of color in the architecture. Could reinforce the palette, maybe windows. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Ramos, for his presentation. Alex, if you could allow Mr. Ramos to speak.
I'm going to promote him as well as two other members of the applicant team.
Okay.
All right, they should all be panelists and can unmute themselves and turn on their cameras if they have them.
Hello, hey guys, this is Steve Ramos with LS3P. I have my colleague Kira Brower who is on the call, and an associate architect that's been working with us, Jennifer Makani Gayoso of MCG Architects. This is final BAR, and this project has been generally well received throughout the process. And so I'm going to start by highlighting some of the revisions that have been made since the last meeting, all of which I think are improvements, and many of which are a direct result of comments that we got at the last BAR meeting. If you could go advance the slides, let's go to page 3. So this is perfect. So we just to try to make it as easy as possible for everyone, knowing that people may be looking at small screens, we've started to highlight the comments which we felt were the most substantial at the last meeting. Starting with the bottom left corner, there was comments about the parking garage, or it's really the motor court, which is where you get out, where the valet picks up your vehicle and enter into the building. And there was a comment that that opening was too large. I think it was about 15 feet tall. To resolve that, what we've done is we've taken the same transom window that we have above the lobby entrance, and we've effectively wrapped that around to the garage entrance and lowered that by, I think, approximately 4 feet, which I think is nice because it lowers the scale, but it also kind of continues that language around and helps kind of stitch together what's happening at the hotel entrance, as well as that glass corner that cantilevers there. Another comment was about signage. We were showing really 2 blade signs, one up on the building that you see there, and then one down low at the entrance to the garage. And that's actually, it turns out, is not allowed by zoning. So we've restudied the zoning ordinance, and we have removed the sign that was on at the top of the building. We've retained the right angle sign at the vehicle entrance, which is helpful for pedestrians and cars. And we've added a flat sign, a Moxie sign right above the entrance to the hotel. The hotel is called Moxie. And so this does conform to zoning. We have confirmed that. We feel like it is a little more subtle than the previous right angle sign, but it adds a little bit of uniqueness to the building, as well as announcing what the building is. Next slide, please. One of the other more substantial comments was about the top of the building. And if you look on the left, you can see that we had kind of a layering of white and black. It was white brick and black metal. And there was a comment that maybe it was just a little too busy, and that maybe it could be simplified, and that extending up the architecture from down below up to that floor might be the best thing to do. And so that's exactly what we've done. We have changed what was black metal to white brick. We still have the layering of pilasters. We also tweaked the window sizes. They are still larger at that top floor, but they are more consistent with the windows below than they were in the previous scheme. And so I think that was an improvement, and that it is much more simple and more refined in a good way. Next slide. So this is just a different angle where you can see that move at level 7, where we've changed it to white brick. You can also see the signage that has been revised. And you can see the transom window down at the ground floor, where we have that gridded glass that kind of wraps around. And so, it's a very subtle gesture or nod to the leaded glass windows that we know that are part of historic Charleston. And then that gridded glass kind of works its way up the corner of the building as well. Next slide. Just a different angle where you can see those changes again. Here's a up close look at the entrance to the hotel. There's actually going to be a cafe right at the front. So if you entered in these doors, you would enter into a cafe. You can see that we've integrated the frosted glass at that transom. Previously, that frosted glass was only at the corner of the building, the cantilevered section. And we thought that that was kind of a nice touch. Again, another subtle reference to the leaded glass that you find in historic storefronts. And it also just helped kind of stitch its way around to the corner there. Next slide. Again, the garage entrance and the height, which was discussed. That's the previous image on the far left. It was some other comments about this image was that exposed concrete ceilings were not the most appropriate, and that the light fixture that we were showing was a little too prominent. And so in the middle image, you see we've integrated that transom window. We've gotten rid of the concrete ceilings, and we've instead put in a dropped-in metal ceiling that has marquee lighting. And then the third image, which is where we are now, we took that ceiling, we pushed it up as high as it could go. That way it's downplayed when you're at the sidewalk. And so that entrance is pushed back approximately 30 feet from the sidewalk. So we think that that lighting will be a nice feature. The lighting that you see on the right there, that's a lantern that we actually custom designed that to be responsive to the building. And there's a local lantern company that's going to be able to fabricate that for us. Lighting is something that we discussed a lot, especially at Final BAR. We really like this concept of the marquee lighting at the entrance. And so the image in the top right is an inspiration image that we really love that. And so that's effectively what we're proposing for that covered garage entrance. And so it is a little bold, but again, it's 30 feet back from the sidewalk. And I think it'll be a nice feature, and we can dial back the foot candles on those lights so that it's not, we're not trying to create, a strobe light or anything, so I think it'll be a very nice feature. And these are just some other elevation drawings of the drive court. We intend to have a mural painted on the wall on the top. We have not yet procured the artist to do that, but once we do have that, it will be a separate submittal to you all when it has been designed. This is just an image from Walnut Street. We spent a lot of time focused on the front of the building, but I think the back of the building has developed quite nicely. It's very restrained architecture, but I think it has grace and it has beauty in its simplicity. Next. Talking about signs again, we would love to be able to have a sign on the Walnut Street elevation if possible. This would be visible from I-26. And the image in the top right, that's the design that we're proposing. But we did show an alternate blade sign if that was something that folks felt was more appropriate or preferred. But we think it would be another nice accent to the building. And it just Moxie's an interesting word. In addition to being the name of the hotel, we just thought that would be a fun thing to have on the building. The lighting of signs is also something that is often discussed. There's a lot of ways to
Steve?
He's frozen.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do these days in Charleston.
Aha.
Uh,
Oh, I think he's back. No,
you
he's
back,
muted.
Steve? He's muted. There we go.
Yes, apologies. I think my internet was in and out. I was just commenting that, we're proposing a front lit sign, but that there are other options if there's something that is felt to be more sensitive or preferred over front lit signage. Next. The rooftop screenage was also a topic at the last meeting. The floor plan on the top is what we had at the previous VAR meeting. I want to comment that the building is only 50 feet wide, which is somewhat narrow for a building of this height. And because of that, it's been very hard to screen all of the different mechanical devices, as well as the elevator overrun, the stairs. There's also a generator on the roof. And so one of the suggestions at the last meeting was the middle option, was that we kind of restrict the screening to only where the footprint of the different elements are. And we looked at that, and I'm going to show you an image of it. But at the end, we felt like it was more cohesive and consistent with the building to have the screen around the perimeter of the building. That way we are more comfortable knowing that we'll screen them, but you don't have this jagged nature to the rooftop. And you'll see that in the next slide. So, the image on the bottom right shows what it would look like if we were to go in and out to more closely follow the footprints of the mechanical equipment. And I personally felt like that called more attention to the equipment, and kind of said that it was a mechanical screen. Whereas if we do a consistent wrapper that feels like an extension of the building, I feel like that's the best way to handle that. And so that's what we have proposed with this design. At the last meeting, it was suggested that we study the integration of color if we aren't able to have signage that has color. And we did a pretty thorough study of looking at ways to integrate color into glass. And although some of these we felt like were quite interesting and could be beautiful, we just felt like it was not consistent with the architecture of the building, which was a more reserved architecture. So unfortunately decided not to pursue these any further than study. Next. Last but not least, here's some images of the materials that are going to be on the building. A majority of this building is brick. The base of the building is this, it's called black diamond brick, which you see in the top right. And then on the left is an image of the white brick. We did look at the idea of having painted brick, but ultimately liked the look of the through body color, as well as the texture that is created from the through body brick. In addition to brick, we have a lot of metal on the project. So the windows are all aluminum, that Atlantic gray there. So it's a very dark gray. So in shadow, it will appear black, but then in sunlight, it'll be a lighter gray. We also, where we have elements that touch the white brick, we are generally using a very light gray aluminum that you see there. The window sills are a cast stone, that buff color. And then we have a combination of vision glass and an acid etched glass that you see there. Next slide. Again, because we can't be there in person to show you larger samples, we just tried to take some larger photos so that you could see a little closer what those bricks look like. So they do have some texture to them. The white brick has more of a sand finish, whereas the black brick has a little bit of a glossy finish and has some iron spotting in it that adds some texture, which we think is a nice combination. And with that, I'm actually going to finish this presentation. we've got floor plans. We also have enlarged details that we can look at if you all would like. And I also wanted to echo Jay's comments, thanking Dennis for your tenure on the BAR. You've no doubt made a positive imprint on the architecture of the city. You've improved the process of the BAR a great deal. And I've personally learned a great deal from you. So I really appreciate all that you've done. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate the words, kind words.
But it won't help you now.
Is there any public comment on this project? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Are there any questions regarding this project? Let me back up. Hearing none, is there any public comment on this project?
We have 2 members of the public who will be speaking. We have Will Hamilton, and he can unmute himself.
Thank you, Alex. It's Will Hamilton again with Historic Charleston Foundation. We'd like to thank Steve and their design team for reaching out to discuss the project ahead of the meeting tonight. We feel like the proposal has improved throughout the various phases of the design review process. We're comfortable with the majority of the changes in this iteration, including the removal of the blade sign on the east facade, the addition of the transom glass over the driveway entry, the reduction in height, and the change in brick color at the 6th floor. Now, moving forward, we still feel there are a few items that should be addressed at the final approval stage of the review process. The signage at the west elevation we feel is not necessary and would ask that the applicant consider removing it. We feel the pink color incorporated into the other 2 signs may be difficult to discern during daylight hours and would ask the applicant to consider another color there. We feel the marquee driveway lighting is an attractive approach that will be somewhat subdued as it will be behind the newly proposed driveway transom. We'd also ask the applicant if it's feasible to reconfigure the rooftop elements in order to pull the mechanical enclosure in at the southeast and northeast corners of the building. The enclosure seems much more obvious now than it did in previous iterations of this design. Finally, we prefer the colored glass approach, but would prefer to see it incorporated into the transom glass at the 1st floor. So overall, the design is well conceived and it has shown a number of improvements during the course of the review process. But we'd ask the board to consider the previously mentioned items before giving the design final approval. Thank you.
And our second public speaker is Erin Minigan, and she can unmute herself.
Thanks, Alex. Erin Minigan, Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciates the applicant reaching out to us and walking us through the changes driven by comments from the previous review. We have consistently been supportive of this project, and while we continue to feel this building has progressed in a positive direction, believe some elements have taken a step backward. Specifically, pushing the mechanical screen to the edge of the parapet causes it to be far too visible. This, in combination with changing the brick on the upper level to a uniform color and increasing the height of the cornice, has resulted in the building becoming too top-heavy and reads almost as an additional floor of height. In reviewing the rooftop mechanical layout on page 51, we believe there are opportunities to reduce the screening footprint and agree with staff that the stair and elevator towers do not need to be screened. We encourage restudy of the mechanical screen to stay true to the design presented in previous reviews. Finally, we do have some concern with the high contrast of the black and white bricks and mortar. We continue to suggest painting the brick, which we feel will have a softer appearance and patina better over time. Also, we support incorporating more pops of color as studied on page 53 to help break up the stark contrast. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Michelle?
That's it.
All right, Mr. Dowd, comments and
Hey, yeah, we've broken our comments down into changes and improvements and then some things to study or modify when presenting to staff for final review by staff if the board agrees with our recommendation. So some of the changes and improvements, the presentation package, I'll say first, for this application is excellent with comparative designs and board and staff comments provided on the same page. And really, this should be the model for all BARL submittals going forward. So I thank you for that. The addition of translucent glass at the storefront and over the garage entry helped to unify the project, and the custom wall sconce fixtures are a nice touch. The change to the top floor, continuing the architectural language of the lower floors, is a big improvement, and the corner is now the feature of the project. Staff now agrees with the mechanical screening concept that is more unified with the building, although it could be moved back more to be less prominent, as well as the profile of the cap being reduced and simpler. Staff feels that the proposed white brick will be fine as long as it's not a glazed brick, meaning, you know, smooth and shiny brick. The garage door has been downgraded on the west elevation, but that is reasonable from our perspective. It's, you know, on a secondary street. We disagree about the colored glass and would prefer to see color introduced at the windows, the color of the window sash and frames rather than colored glass, which feels to me like it would be just a little gaudy. Things to study and modify. The comment from the board about the black and white color scheme has only been studied to look at colored glass, as I mentioned, at the corner element. And as I said, we believe the building will be elegant, but for color for the windows could help. The elevations call for an aluminum coping and cornice, but the details show GFRC, and GFRC is preferred. The high-speed garage doors should be opaque. The white pavers shown in the rendering at the garage entry should be considered, as they'll get dirty quickly. An alternative to the marquee lighting at the drop-off entry, we feel should be studied to be more subtle. I'm concerned that that's going to be a little flashy, even with the addition of that shroud over the entry. Eliminate strip lighting at the canopy, and photometrics have not been provided and will be needed for final review by staff so we can see the overall impact of lighting. The mural design should come back to the board and should not be too garish or overstated. And the signage concept is improved. However, signage will be reviewed by staff separately and is not part of this review. The right angle sign directed toward the highway should be removed, as the zoning ordinance does not allow a facade sign, a blade sign, and a monument sign on the same project. Although I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll defer to Alex on this because he's our signage guru, if they have two streets that they front on, can they not have signage on the back street as well?
That applies to facade signs.
Okay.
So they would be allowed by the ordinance to have a facade sign facing 26, but a blade sign and the monument sign would not be allowed together.
Okay. Well, all right. So they have no blade sign at the front. They have a monument, what we consider a monument sign at the garage entry. So they're okay on the Meeting Street side. Typically, the BAR does not sanction signage high on buildings to attract attention to the interstate. So if there was a sign on the back side, I think it needs to be down lower, closer to the street. And halo effect or gooseneck lights should be employed as neon, reverse channel letters, or illuminated and backlit letters are not permitted. But this is a really good project, and we're recommending final approval with conditions noted and final review by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. Ms. Ramos, do you have any response or clarification to public comment or the city staff comment and recommendations?
No, everything was clear.
Thank you. Board discussion.
I'll just quickly jump in. This is Jay White. I've have enjoyed seeing this project progress. It certainly has matured while it's been on the boards, and I think it's in a great spot. I agree with most of the staff comments, except the marquee lighting in the vehicular entry. I think that the way it's shrouded now will reduce any sort of garishness, and if the lighting levels could be dialed down, then it might be a nice surprise on Meeting Street. But that's a staff comment number 5, but in all other respects, I agree with staff's comments and recommendation.
This is Leon Scott. I'm in agreement with staff recommendation as well.
All right.
David, this is James. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
The transom glass wraparound at the car entrance was successful. I think it looks great. I sure hope that we don't install the sign on the back side on the Walnut Street so it can be visible not just from Walnut Street but also the interstate. I hope that does not get installed. It's incredibly important for a mock-up, details of a mock-up to be done on this project, and we are struggling with how we're going to do mock-ups right now so we can view materials, but we are experiencing projects like the one down at Morrison Drive, which is a very large white facade on a building that was difficult to see, even seeing a mock-up. So when we're talking about the importance of materials, and in here it's very important, we've got to work out the details of how we're going to be able to view mock-ups, given our new way of doing business, or given our way of doing business now. I also support the use of GFRC on the coping and cornice. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Luda Sobchuk. I'm in support of the staff comments and conditions, but I also, like Jay, kind of like to see that marquee lighting there, see what happens, because it's so recessed from the street. Other than that, I'm in support of this project wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
So David, you're looking for a motion?
I am.
I'd make a motion for final approval with conditions noted by staff and final review by staff, incorporating staff and board comments.
I'll second that.
So that's the motion made by Mr. Metters with final approval with conditions noted and final review by staff, incorporating staff and board comments.
Yes.
Can I ask
That was
for-
seconded by Mr. White, correct?
That's correct.
All right, Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
Mr. Hazelton, can I ask for a clarification first? One of the comments was about the marquee lighting, and it seemed that that was one of the comments that the board members.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that that was documented.
I believe that was brought up in the board discussion.
Yeah, that's incorporated via the board
Yes.
comments.
Okay, great.
Yes. Okay, Mr. White, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
And this is David Hazelton. I vote yay in favor.
And I just want to add one thing, if I could, to Mr. Metters. During this time of the COVID situation, we decided that, we couldn't hold up applicants with mock-ups, so we've been reviewing them at a staff level. And if we feel like there's something that is very critical for the board to see, then we'll ask a couple of board members to come out and look at the mock-up with us so that we're not creating a quorum. But, you know, we get some key board members to look, and we're going to have to see, you know, how we're going to handle this going forward, because we do have some very important mock-ups. I mean, I've been looking at the mock-up for the African American Museum, which, you know, had some absolute issues that they're working on now. I would have liked to have had, you know, the board come out and look at it, not just me, but I'm confident that we're going to get where we need to go on that one. But we are going to have to try to figure something out going forward.
And Dennis, I do appreciate your comment, and we experienced this. You asked Jay and me to come and look at a project, and that project had a mock-up that all of us had an opportunity to view, and even with that viewing, it was challenging, right? Just because of the enormity of the project versus the mock-up. So I mean, I would be willing to commit to coming to view a mock-up, even if I was by myself or with you. And I'm confident each board member would be willing to do the same thing, so we wouldn't have a quorum. But I believe it's very important, and these projects are proving that to us.
Well, I've seen my last mock-up, but I think it'd be a good idea for you.
I wanted to give you that opportunity.
But, you know, if you think that 70-foot high wall is a challenge, imagine what a challenge it is to this next applicant.
Yep, right. Got it.
45 Romney Street. Let me bring that up here. And here we are, 45 Romney Street, requesting preliminary approval for renovation of an existing metal warehouse building in the East Central neighborhood, post 1955, and the Historic Corridor District. So it's a prefabricated Butler building here on Romney in North Hanover. The new technology center is right here, and the garage is right here. So, you know, that wall I talked about is actually right here on the property line, which is right here. And this is the building in question here. And then a view looking at the corner of Romney and North Hanover. And then across the street for some context. And then the Sanborn maps, which don't really tell us anything because this building is not a Sanborn worthy building. Previous motion was conceptual approval with board and staff comments back in March of this year. One board member agreed with staff comments and recommendations, supported the project. Second was comfortable with staff comments, and the third asked that the roof be evaluated for the next presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the applicant. Alex, if you could allow them to speak, and I think it's Mr. Dixon.
Yes, I promoted him to panelist, and he can unmute himself and turn on a camera if he's got it.
We have to do the camera, huh?
Only if you want to.
All right. Well, we'll keep that off. I think Andy did as well. Okay. This is Rush Dixon Architects. I think maybe we'll go ahead and start back on, maybe go to sheet 8.
Okay.
You've already shown context photographs, but
yeah, my screen is not behaving, so give me a moment, please. Not sure what's going on here. Where do you want me to go, Rush?
It's just the context photos. It's page 8 of 23.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this is moving so slow, but
think it's my civil engineer's drawings. They're huge.
Yeah, but there are other huge drawings in here that
Huh.
did not create a problem. So this must be an internet issue.
Yeah, the graphics are a little funny.
Yeah. So are we going after your civil drawings?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think what's happening on the site is captured in my drawings anyway, so I thought I'd just jump ahead to that.
Okay. Man. I expect to hear you've got mail anytime now. I'm not sure what's going on. It's just very slow.
There we go.
There you go.
I'm gonna go back right there.
Go back one day. Yeah, this is pretty much showing the same images that you had shown. My original pictures were obviously taken before the garage went up, but I can tell you that didn't affect what we're doing here in any way. But so obviously with this building, we're not modifying it other than reusing or covering up some of the garage doors. There's about 22 of them, and reskinning it. But for the most part, we're maintaining the form. We're just replacing the skin and creating new openings. Right now, do I have control of a cursor at all? I guess not.
No, I think you have to ask Mr. Dowd to advance the slides.
That's no problem. But in the big image on the bottom right, for the most part, it's just surrounded by asphalt. And with the limited amount of money we can put into the building itself, we wanted to at least create a nicer pedestrian experience and put some money into the sidewalks and the possibly using some of the outdoor areas for seating and for future use. We don't have a specific use for this. Originally, it was conceived to be for potentially hospitality, restaurants, and mercantile. But since our last presentation, COVID-19 occurred, so there's a little bit of a pullback you'll see from where we are now, from where we were before, not assuming that it's going to be a restaurant or something like that. So, so since the last time, we've pulled back a little bit of the site wall, the canopy that we had designed, and put back in some of the back garage doors so that it could still be used as a warehouse if it needs to be, which is its current use at the moment. So we had to build in a little bit of flexibility as to how this building is going to be used. So that's a big change from what you saw the last time. But the industrial aesthetic and the materials and the overall concept is still intact. We just kind of created a pulled back version of how we created the edge and that public space in front of the building. So if you go to page 9, the previous page, this just shows the shell of the building right now and what we propose to take away. And I don't expect on your screen you can see all the dashed lines, but we're removing some doors and some walls to create 3 primary tenants. Along the back, we're mostly removing the flimsy garage doors and covering those up. But the majority of the front walls, those garage doors, the majority of those we're filling in with glass and or storefront doors. Only 2 or 3 of those are getting covered up. And if you go to the page 11, we've attempted to, you can see some of the garage doors in the tenant on the right We want to encourage some opening if that does become a restaurant, and a corner entry there. Along the new sidewalks and the new parking area, we've created a little bit of an edge for planting to kind of separate the sidewalk from this kind of public seating area potentially. To create a little bit of a ceiling, we kind of did just some simple individual lights, catenary lights. They're a picture of them is later on in the presentation, but they're designed so that you don't see the actual bulb itself. I think they're very sleek. They can be very nice, but it kind of helps us create a little bit of a ceiling over top of those sitting areas. And it kind of creates three separate areas, one on the right and on the left, and then we believe there's a bit of a tenant that might be a salon in the middle, but each one has its own little separate identity. But on the far left side, there's still some space to create a space for seating if it comes to that, but we wanted to kind of create some interest there with a little bit of landscaping and those lights as well. So from there, there's the roof plan. If you can go back to 11, I'm sorry. The majority of the back area is really the alley, so to speak, but there's enough room to get vehicles in and out, but also to have the dumpsters, the mechanical units, and we have a very tall screen around those. We're taking it almost to the eve of the structure because of the flood zone. These have to be elevated about 6 or 7 feet out of the ground. So you'll see that on the elevations. So if we want to move on to the next sheet, that's the simple roof plan. And next sheet. I'm sorry that these are coming out this way. Yeah, this is the previous scheme, and I'm not sure how it's reading on your screens, but it's a little wonky on ours. But you can see on the top west elevation, we had more of a canopy screen, sunscreen for potential seating for restaurants out there, and the retaining wall. And now on the bottom, you can kind of see how that looks. We strategically made it a canopy that was kind of a freestanding frame so that it didn't physically touch the building, therefore not adding cost to the building cost, because we were trying to stay under the 50% rule. And on the south elevation, we were not cutting into the building. We're resisting that urge to cut a big opening, but that would have led to cost to structurally compensating for that, and again trying to stay under that 50% amount. And on the right, you see where we had the low screen wall. In the new version, you see on the next page, we came up with that. So if you want to go to 14, I apologize that these are not on the same page, but we had originally structured this presentation so that when you opened up a book, one would be on the left and one would be on the right. So I apologize that you're not seeing them side by side. And again, this is also coming out a little funny with the light sources are coming out very hard, and they're very translucent in our version. So, but this demonstrates that we're not showing string lights. It's just little single catenary lights kind of at each bay of the kind of following the rhythm of the existing building and the storefront openings that you see there. So that kind of on the drawing on the bottom, you can kind of see the beginnings of the screen wall. And on the left, you can see a lighter effort creating a little bit of an edge at the sidewalk. You can start to see a little bit of the custom canopy at each of the tenant openings. So next sheet. Again, kind of the same thing from the previous scheme, the lower screen wall and the previous trellis structure on the north elevation. So page 16, that's the new backside elevation with the screen wall. We've added back a few of the garage doors to keep that use a possibility.
And this is the wall, by the way, Rush, that faces that 70-foot high blank concrete wall of the garage.
That is correct. That's correct. And go to the next page. These are some of the materials that we're proposing now. So we're going from a metal skin building to a metal skin building. We're just trying, and we're going with horizontal versus the vertical. I think we can detail the windows nicely, as you see there. You see the light I'm proposing, and that's just one of those lights at each bay, and the occasional wall-mounted light on the left, and an aluminum storefront window system you see on the left there. So this was the original one showing kind of a site wall, some landscaping, and the more dramatic trellis structure. That's what we've pared down. And you can start to see a wall that I thought was much lower originally in the background. The new scheme is kind of a lighter touch where we're still showing possibility for some outdoor seating, but a lighter structure with just the poles and the strings and the simple lights hanging down, creating a little bit of atmosphere there on both sides of the street. Page 20, just another closer up look. You can start to see a little bit of the simple canopy. It's almost invisible. So if we go to the details of that on the next page. That's a simple section. But here is just a simple metal canopy I was studying. I didn't want to have columns in the concrete, and I didn't want to have brackets going back to the structure, cutting into the metal siding. So I just devised a simple hanging from the frame above and then attaching to the wall system, kind of hiding it in front of the aluminum storefront with kind of a hidden connection there. So just a very simple light plate fabrication. I probably need to add a couple of stiffener plates to make it actually feasible, but there's another generation of detailing there. So very minimal, very simple, but keeping some rain and sun off of those storefront systems. A little closer look at the catenary light you see there. To the left of that image, you see kind of just the simple post detail, just a 3.5-inch steel tube with a little eyelet connection supporting the wires, and in turn holding up the lights. A similar detail down below, just a simple steel tube structure for the mechanical enclosure with just treated 2x4s, either with an opaque stain, semi-transparent stain, kind of enclosing that. So that's the extent of the details. There's probably 3 or 4 details, and I think I've gone over all of them. So if there are any kind of gray areas, glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant?
Rush, where was that short concrete wall that you were talking about? Is that the wall that you removed from the previous plan?
It is. That was originally going to be kind of part site wall, part bench, and that became.
Got it. Okay, I got it.
We thought we'd take that out and just do the lighter touch you see here. Count on the landscaping, and we have the landscaping plan here if we want to take a look at that. But using just the pipes, the trees, and the landscaping to kind of create that separation and that edge.
And again, Russ, I mean, your design is driven by trying to, or having to stay under the 50% rule on the cost.
Yes. To waterproof this building, like I said, we'd have to go up 6 or 7 feet to waterproof, and it just became an infeasible solution. So to kind of work with that, we have a simple metal solution. We think we're improving the building. I think the details are going to be clean, and we'll still have kind of that industrial aesthetic that I think works on this site and in the surrounding area.
I have a question, Rush. Are you recoating the roof at all? I think right now it's kind of a patchwork up there, right? Like a third of the roof.
Yes, it is a patchwork that we do intend to reuse it. And how there are a few kind of those old skylights that look terrible from all angles underneath and on top, but there's going to be patching, removing of those and patching, and that there may be a need to, we haven't kind of explored all those details, but probably a final coating that kind of seals everything together. So it may be a little bit of some sort of paint or roof seal of some sort.
Yep.
And so maybe a color would be explored.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there any public comment on this project?
No public comment.
All right, Mr. Dowd, city staff comments, recommendations?
Okay, well, this is a really elegant design, I think, for, a modest budget. I think they're doing a really nice thing with this building. It's been well considered. The board motion last time included a staff comment that all the parking paving should be pervious with hard paving at entry and exit. But, we're comfortable not requiring that. And believe that the paving at the outdoor dining terrace, that would be nice if it were brick pavers or a more decorative paving than concrete. And drawing number 5 of the previous submission displays the extent of that brick paving. I think, let's see if I can get back to that quickly. Probably not. But you know which one I'm talking about, Rush. There was this drawing here. Oh, it's going too far now. This drawing here that, shows some decorative paving, at least in the outdoor dining areas. And other than that, staff feels like it's okay for the rest of the paving to be hard paving, with the exception of, some areas that you're showing that are not hard. And brake metal is acceptable for this building, but it should be properly backed to avoid oil canning and well detailed and well installed. But I would avoid riveted connections and exposed cut edges and those types of things that degrade the installation of that type of material. Provide details of flood panel system if you need it, but I guess you don't if you're under the 50% rule. And we believe the exterior catenary lighting will look best if the cables are taut. I mean, it's a minor thing, but a lot of times when these cables are kind of swag and they're not all the same, they look a little sloppy. I think it would look better if they were just nice and taut. Changes due to the scope reduction, they're all good changes in our view. And it'll be good to see the building upgraded and utilized. So we're recommending preliminary approval with staff conditions noted and final review by staff.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd.
You're welcome.
Does the applicant need any response or clarification to any of the city staff comments?
No.
All right. Any board discussion?
David, this is James.
Yes,
Rush,
sir.
I think we've all been in that environment where you are trying to hit a budget, and I really looked at your material selections, and I've also kind of looked inside this building a little bit and understand the challenges you've got, and I think what you've created on paper, if you can really make that a reality there, that's pretty cool given your budget restrictions.
Great.
Yeah, I think this is an incredibly successful application of a formula that we've seen a lot in the Upper Peninsula, where we take former industrial buildings and sort of give them another few years of usefulness before they become subsumed with more dense development, we suppose. I think the material choices and the modifications are great, and I love the canopy detail. Actually, y'all have always had a knack for an efficient canopy detail, and that's one of them, I'm sure. I agree with staff's
Sort of feels like a beer bottle opener, that canopy.
Yeah, it just seems like I've seen something like that before. Maybe one or two iterations of it. The one thing I agree with staff comments, but the one thing about the lights, I think it's going to be almost impossible to get the curvature out of that cable. Even if you do manage to get it taut, it's only a matter of time before it sags enough. And that's really why they call them catenary lights, because they hang in the catenary curve. So I'm actually fine so long as I'm fine with the curvature, so long as it's installed consistently.
Yeah.
Any other comment?
Well, if
I'd
not,
make a motion for preliminary approval with staff conditions noted and final review by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. That was a motion for preliminary approval with staff's conditions noted and final review by staff, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'll second that.
Ms. Sobek, how do you vote? Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
Ludo, you were muted.
Luda, I think I can unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yay, in favor.
Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
All right, Mr. White, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
And Mr. Meadows, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
All right, David Hazelden, yay, in favor. Motion carries 5-0.
Great.
And that's
So
it.
David, guys, let me just, at the close of this meeting, I was trying to touch base with Jay today to, because Jay was going to say everything we needed to say professionally about Dennis. Dennis, I wanted you to know that I appreciated the personal conversations that we had and some of the stories you've shared with me about some of your projects, personal projects, and then other things that we've talked about personally. And everything that Jay said, I agree with, and I think that you will be back in front of this board, though, making a presentation on a project that you. But I appreciate you and our friendship. Thank you.
Well, thank you, James. I appreciate you saying that. And as I said before, it's been an honor working with you guys, and being involved in helping to, to whatever extent we can shape, what Charleston looks like. Really, really an honor. And if I do wind up back before this board, I'd like to be able to prepare the staff comments myself, if that's okay.
That's great.
I'll miss you guys, though.
Sounds good. Enjoy it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So what's your last day, Dennis?
August 7th.
Man,
Yep.
that's soon.
Yeah.
Well,
2 weeks. 2 weeks. Yeah.
I got Alex,
one more.
are you gonna?
I got one more BARS meeting tomorrow night, and then that's it for BAR meetings for me.
Alex, are you going to have to run the meetings?
We'll see.
We'll see. You say that with such, you got to really talk like you want it there. You really got to push for it. Yeah. All right. Well.
All right.
Thank you all, and y'all have a good evening.
Yeah, you guys have a good evening. Thanks
everyone.
again.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Thank you.